Hello, you're watching Transbrations. I'm your host, nahshondion. Today's special guest is Naomi RaMona Schliesman. She's an award-winning interdisciplinary artist with over 25 years of experience. She has exhibited her work nationally and internationally. She received an MFA degree from the University of Wisconsin-Madison and a BFA degree with an emphasis in sculpture from Minnesota State University Moorhead. Schliesman has received a fellowship from Ragdale and Kimmel Nelson Center for the Arts and was awarded second place for Miami University Young Sculptors competition for William and Dorothy Yeck Award and was a LEAP finalist for the Society of Contemporary Craft Award. She has traveled abroad, has done artist residencies nationally and internationally. Schliesman taught 2D and 3D design and was the gallery director for the School of Arts at Minnesota State University Moorhead from 2011 to 2013. She was the artist development director for rural programming at Springboard for the Arts in Fergus Falls, Minnesota from 2013 to 2020, where she managed the Hinge Arts at the Kirkbride Residency Program, facilitated the Work of Art Business Skills for Artists workshops, artist development panels, and mentored artists across the United States through one-on-one artist career consultations. Schliesman serves on numerous boards and committees in her community, and she resides in rural Minnesota and continues her studio art practice and freelance work. She is a contracted artist career consultant and Work of Art Business Skills for Artists facilitator for Springboard for the Arts, a teaching artist for Cadats Galleries, and the gallery curator and arts calendar editor at Lake Region Arts Council, and the personal executive assistant to Jeff Zachman at Zachman Studios. Hello, Naomi. How are you doing today?
I am doing well. Thank you so much, nahshon, for having me on today, and I'm excited to spend this time with you. We've had a friendship for some time, so I'm looking forward to our discussion and what questions you have for me today. And it's great to see you, and you're looking beautiful as always, I want to say.
Naomi, thank you, and you are too. As I guess those who know you closely, affectionately call you Mama Bear.
Yes, Mama Bear, yep.
Mama Bear, it's good to see you. So this month we're celebrating Women's History Month. Who are some of the remarkable women that you look up to?
When I think about the women who have made an influence in my life and also generationally, the first woman that comes to mind is both my grandmothers, RaMona Schliesman, who I am named after, and I was also born on her birthday, so we shared a birthday. And then also my other grandmother, Barbara Schliesman, who was the one who I got to go out horseback riding with, learned about the herbs and medicine that were in the prairie. And I really didn't realize what she was teaching me now until my 40s. I knew what she was doing back then when I was a child and showing me everything. And the women right now who are a major influence, of course, is my own mother, who is an incredible woman. Also was going to go to fashion school in Paris, was accepted, but then I happened, and she actually decided not to go. And she always wanted it to be a goal for me to be able to go over to Paris then, since she was not able to do that. And I actually was able to do that back in 1999. I was able to go over to Paris and have that experience and be there. And it was something that she always wanted me to do. So that was something that we held together. And now the goal is my 8-year-old, who has informed both my mom and I that she will be going to design school in Paris, and she's planning it out already. And that's something that we're actually going to help her develop to meet that goal, because it's something that is a tradition in our family and something that is part of our bloodline, because also Zara is already designing and cutting out her own dresses and hand sewing them. So she's also been influenced by her grandmother too. The other women that I would love to highlight briefly, nahshon, that have been very important to me, especially when I was going through my recovery with breast cancer, were Anna Lee, who is a very close friend of mine, who resides in Fargo Moorhead and is an artist designer, also a community builder, and is a supporter of women within our region. And she has been someone who has been a rock for me, and also someone to bounce ideas off with, and for both of us to start our own freelancing careers as well, and how we have worked together. And then some of the other women that are locally here in Fergus Falls that own their own business have their full-time families is Chelsea Belhartz, who is a professional dog groomer. And then also Jenny from Penny Cakes, who has always wanted to have her own bakery to create sweet treats.
Mhm.
And then Nancy Sharon Valentine, who is the executive director at the Cadets Gallery, who has moved mountains throughout her career and has done so by being a huge role model within the community. And lastly, Maxine Adams, who is the executive director at the Lake Region Arts Council, who was the first woman that I met when I moved back here to Fergus Falls back in 2011. And when I moved back home after going to college and getting my degrees, which we'll be talking about later, I went out and introduced myself to all the people within the arts community to let them know that I was here. And Maxine was the first person that I met. And she then, in return, introduced me to all of the people at Springboard for the Arts, to the Cadets Gallery, a Center for the Arts, and then also made connections with other local artists to let them know that I was back in the community and willing to give back to my community, which has shaped me to be who I am today.
What does Women's History Month mean to you?
To me, Women's History Month is actually celebrating the women who have misbehaved. I'll be completely honest about that. Because the women who are the role models within my life and who I look up to, and also throughout history, are the ones who have broke the rules, who have challenged, who have had a voice. And that is something that I am distilling in my daughter and teaching to my daughter, that she has her voice. There is a reason why she is here, and that she has a purpose, and that she matters. And everyone matters. I just want to say that. But throughout history, it has been proven that women have been suppressed in so many ways. Women were not able to get their own credit cards. Women were not able to have their own bank accounts. Women were not allowed to purchase a vehicle or a house without a co-signer of being a husband or even a father or a grandfather. And so for me, back in 2019, which was so great, is that I worked with a realtor, Laura Johnson, who's here in Fergus Falls. And I let her know that I was a single mom looking for a home for my daughter and I. And she's like, I have a fantastic banker that I need to introduce you to, who will help you get the financing that you need, Naomi. Because I did go to a local bank, which I'm not going to mention, and tried to get a loan. And I was denied right away. There was no discussion. There was all about, you're a single parent, a single income. We're not going to have this discussion, and sorry, we can't offer you this loan. So I found a woman who was willing to work with me, a local banker, and she helped me to look for all the loans that I qualified. She helped me choose loan that would be the best fit for me. And that's where I was able to purchase my home for my daughter and I. And so for me, it's all about the empowerment of giving women the options that we all deserve, and being able to create a life that we all want to live with joy and happiness, and to have things that bring us happiness. I mean, yeah.
We're near the end of Women's History Month.
Mhm.
Have you celebrated Women's History Month? Has your community did anything?
Yes, actually, Jenny from Penny Cakes got all of these local women who own businesses, everywhere from hair salons to massage therapists, also other bakeries, flower shops that are owned by women. She created a huge care package that was put together from these flower shops, massages, salon visits as well, given away. And people in the community then were able to make nominations of women within Fergus Falls who they wanted to nominate and share their story. She, in return, then read all of those nominations and selected 3 women who were chosen for the top nominations. And then there were 3 or 5 other women who were part of a drawing where they could get a free massage. They could go on a shopping spree at a local store here, Dandelion and Burdocks, which is locally owned. It was a really great way how Jenny, this is her 3rd year of doing that Women's History Month celebration, where for the whole entire month of February, she has it open for the nominations, and then she highlights all of the women-owned businesses that are in our region. And to me, that just shows how much our community is supporting one another. And I have been fortunate where the past 2 years I was one of the awarded nominees. And what's really interesting is that I was actually nominated by two men for that award.
So they're not
So
that bad.
no, they're not. No, no. And then this year, again, another nomination came in for myself, and Jenny actually gave me the letter. And it's just encouraging to hear and read the words, how others see you and others see how
Mm,
you are trying to make your community a better place and that you really care. And
mhm,
that to me is what Jenny's doing. Jenny is making everyone realize what all of the women within this community are putting together, working so hard to have and to have accessible for our community, anywhere from a place to shop for local handmade goods, handmade soaps, to even massage places, to flower shops, the dog grooming as well.
mhm.
All of these things where all these women are starting their own businesses and they are fulfilling the needs within our community and highlighting them, which I think is so very important.
And you are from Fergus Falls, Minnesota. It's a rural community. About how many people? How many? Few
Right
thousand?
now, we are about 14,000. We're about the 14,000. Yep.
Describe Fergus in one sentence.
Fergus Falls is a tree city that is surrounded by the arts and community.
There are 1,000 lakes in Ottertail County, correct?
I think there's more than that. It's so hard to count all of the bodies of water that are actually in Ottertail County because there's the lakes, what we call sloughs, ponds as well. But with the prairie land that we have here, we also have many types of different bodies of water. And so when they talk about like a land of over 10,000 lakes, it seriously is. Minnesota is the land of over 10,000 lakes. And Ottertail County has well over 1,000 different lakes, yeah, in the region.
What's your favorite one?
I would have to say Glendalough State Park is my favorite one, where there are no motorized boats allowed on the lake.
Mhm.
You can canoe on it, you can use your paddleboard, but no motorized boats. So there's no skiing, nothing. It is so clear. And they have beautiful beaches, they have places to camp. And it's just a great place to go because there's a lot of trees too. So there's a bunch of shade as well on the beach where the sand is. So
Mhm.
you can be in the sun, but then when you get hot, you can go back into the trees and relax. And it's also, on sacred ground, which is from indigenous land that they have preserved, where there is all prairie grass land around the lake there.
How far is it from Fergus?
It's about a 30-minute drive,
Not
and
bad at all.
we also have to have a Park pass to be able to get in. But you can purchase it for a yearly pass, which is only like $35, so it's well worth it. And then you have access to go to any of the other state parks in Minnesota as well.
How many of the lakes have you and your family visited in Ottertail County? Hundreds, dozens?
Hundreds. I mean, because growing up, that's what we did is when it was hot or going to a family gathering, we would gather at a local lake because there's always a place to barbecue, have picnics. The kids can go swimming. A lot of the local lakes also have a playground area as well for the kids to go play on. So it's hundreds of them. It's been a part of my upbringing here in Minnesota. And it's one of the reasons why I love the Fergus Falls area, though. Besides, like, we have a lot of trees in our areas. When you were asking me to describe Fergus Falls, it's because we have so many trees. We're considered a tree city. And
Mhm.
so there's so many trees within our region. And then also with the arts community, we have the Lake Region Arts Council, which is our local state council. We also have a Center for the Arts, which brings in concerts, live performers from all over the world.
Mhm.
And then we have the Cadets Gallery, which is our downtown gallery. And then also Springboard for the Arts, which is a local nonprofit art organization that is ran by artists for artists.
Mhm.
And then we have other nonprofits within the region as well that work with local artists on freelancing and other funding opportunities to have them to be a part of the community.
Mhm.
So it's very much tree orientated, water orientated, arts and community.
Definitely tree. I remember when I visited and I was walking down the streets through the community. I remember I walked to the bank, walked to several by a lake, several different places. But there was a lot of, yeah, I did notice that there were a lot of trees. So back to the lake, when you guys would be there for, you said barbecuing, were you barbecuing?
Mhm.
What kind of meat were you barbecuing? Was it deer meat?
There, sometimes there was the deer meat.
Hmm.
Yep. And then also deer sausage, where my family would actually, what happens when we get our deer meat, just to explain, because some people might not know what that is, my dad and also uncles would go out hunting during the hunting season, and they would go out and gather deer. And then they would come home and actually process the deer and the deer meat into sausage and also deer steaks and pieces. And then that's what we would use to grill, and then also hamburgers as well. But yeah, deer meat has been a staple in my diet since I was a child, and it's still a staple in our diet, as well as deer are one of the main animals within our region that we do our hunting and gathering with.
Any rabbits?
No, I have tried rabbit in Italy when I was in Florence, but I did not know I was eating rabbit at the time. And
Hmm.
when I found out I was eating rabbit, I couldn't eat anymore, because when I was growing up, I was involved in 4-H and I actually raised rabbits.
Okay.
And so it was a little hard for me to,
Traumatizing.
yeah.
As a child in Fergus Falls, your family resided in 13 different homes.
Yes, we
What
did.
was what was that journey like for you?
I didn't realize how much of a transition it was each time that my parents chose to move from home to home. And at that time, what they were doing is they were purchasing these homes and then they were remodeling them and they were flipping them before even like flipping was a thing. My parents were doing that as a way to supplement their income, because my father was a full-time carpenter, and he did not graduate from high school, but he went into the carpentry field. And then my mother was in fashion and actually was running one of the local department stores called Maurice's here in the area, and helped them with all of their inventory and purchasing as well. And so they would buy these homes, go in, and my mom, with her design sense, would actually go in and redesign the homes from everything from the wallpaper that they were doing to the paint. And then my dad would be doing all the custom carpentry woodworking and
Mhm.
fine details. But also throughout that, I learned how to frame sheetrock and drywall, and learned all the fundamentals of building at a young age. Also, though, too, when I would, what you would call like get in trouble, or if I was out too late, the next morning my dad would get me up early, where I'd have to go out and help him, reside the house or help with shingling or help build the deck. And so
Put you to
I
work.
always say, yeah, I was always like, you guys did child labor. And they're all like, no, we didn't. We taught you life skills. And I'm all like,
Hmm.
okay.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's helped me to be who I am today, as the creator and problem solver that I am. Because when we would move into those homes, the actual interior spaces would change consistently. And then we would modify it to be something that was more aesthetically pleasing. And then they would sell it, of course, and then we'd move on to the next home and do the exact same thing.
What was your family's longest and shortest stay in one of the homes?
So our longest stay would have been on the one home that was located on Elcott, which was for about 4 years. And it was while I was in high school, which I appreciate. So it was like one home that we stayed in from ninth to 12th grade. And then some of the shortest periods have been where my parents actually had a house fire when I was younger. I was about 4 or 6 months, and my parents is they just bought this new modular home and built a deck and all of this, and their dog that they had actually knocked over a grill and it caught the deck on fire, and my parents were sleeping, and actually with me crying and screaming is what woke them up. And if that wouldn't have happened, I wouldn't be sitting here right now. They lost everything. Even my baby book is completely charred. And so I only have one baby blanket, and that's the one that my mother grabbed me and wrapped me in. And then they saved the baby book, even though it's charred on the outside, just so I could have that, you know, little keepsake to keep throughout the years. But
Mhm.
that they were only in that home for about, I think it was about 3 months. And then we had to move in with my grandparents, and then we started the cycle of moving. And it was anywhere from 6 months to a year and a half. We would be in a home and then we would move.
And you had said that you were already being trained by your parents to look at space and how to interact with space.
Most definitely, and I think that's why I am such an interdisciplinary artist that way,
Mhm.
because I have worked with different types of materials, from wood to plaster to welding, and then also just like the keen design sense that my mom had growing up, and her love of color and also fashion, I think is something that has given me the key elements of what I've needed to be the
Mhm.
successful artist that I've been. I've been brought up in a family of makers. My grandmother was a seamstress who made our clothing and my mom's clothing. Also, my grandfather, who was a farmer, was a phenomenal self-taught woodworker and made furniture, would also go in and remodel people's homes. And then my dad was the carpenter who was always building and doing things. And since the age of 5, I knew that I was going to be an artist. And I told my family that. They've supported me ever since.
Hmm.
And actually, my first grade teacher has my first sketchbook that I had and did all my drawings in. And that was Miss Gail Welly, where I attended school, and she's had that. So to answer your question, yes, like I was set up to be an installation artist where I can go into a space, I can evaluate the architectural grid of that space and look at it. And I think in shapes and colors. I can think about like what I want to do within a space once I walk into it and see the spatial elements. And then I get like what the grid pattern of that is and the dimensions. So then I can create the pieces that I want to install within that institution, being a gallery or a museum, to create my work.
So back to your family real quick. During our preliminary interview last week, you had mentioned that you're from a military family.
So actually, both of my grandfathers were in the military, and also my dad and my stepdad were in the military. My one grandfather, actually, he got inoculated to go over to Germany. And he actually got sick from his vaccinations that he received, and he was not able to board the plane. And that the next day, then they flew out, and that plane crashed, and everyone on that train on that plane died.
How many?
His whole entire oh, what do they call it? It's not troop, but
Fleet? No,
his whole
that's
entire
Navy.
fleet. Yeah. Yeah.
Fleet
His
is
whole
Navy.
entire fleet.
Isn't the fleet Navy?
Is it Navy?
Or
Well, this was through the Army.
battalion?
Yeah,
You
I
know,
don't know what it is for the Army.
troop,
No, you're right. Yeah. But is it the troop?
troop, Army, yeah,
This is
Army
so
troop.
proud of me. The
I
Army
don't know.
troop. So
All of them died?
all of them died. Even the person who was flying the plane. And my grandfather then had to go and clean up the wreckage and had to see all of his friends that he had went through boot camp with, and picked everything up, and then actually saved a wheel from that airplane crash, which my uncle, that he has it to keep in the family, because my
Mhm.
grandfather wanted to take that as a reminder that he was here for a purpose. And what is so interesting about that story, Nahshon, is that my grandfather and I were battling cancer at the same time,
Mhm.
2 years ago. He had pancreatic cancer and I had breast cancer. And we knew that his time was limited. And even though I was going through my own cancer and going down to Mayo Clinic here in Rochester, Minnesota, I was spending time with him, and he was telling me stories and taking him places, and so that my daughter could spend some more time with him too. And so I got to know more about him and who he was. And he was part of the sheriff's posse here in Otter Tail County as well, who would actually go out and help find people. He also would go and help, like if someone did drown within a lake, they would have to go and drag the lake to find that person. And so my grandfather, I found out throughout his life, had many experiences with death and helping.
Oh.
in the community. And then at his funeral, I was asked to speak. And that's when I found out he never shared with us the story about the military. He always reminded us how lucky we were and that, we had to work hard for what we had because he was a business owner his whole entire life as well for
Mhm.
bars and restaurants. And I didn't realize until the day of his funeral what had happened when he was in the military, and that if he would have not gotten sick from those vaccinations,
Mm.
he wouldn't have been there and I wouldn't be here now. And that's something that finding out during having the breast cancer and with him losing his battle with pancreatic cancer, it
Mhm.
has been something that has been a driving force for me to advocate in so many different ways throughout my life and other people's lives of helping within the community right now.
Mhm.
And remembering that we're all here for a purpose and there's a reason why we're here. And
Mhm.
there are many ways in which, our lives could have been taken or changed dramatically. As for my dad was in the Army. And then my grandfather, Lawrence Lehman, who is the other grandfather, actually served over in World War II. And his troop and him actually got to take over one of Hitler's palaces and actually got to stay in it. And they seized that palace, and he got to see one of the most gorgeous art collections in the world, because we all know how Hitler would take artwork from other countries and other people during the war and created his own collection. And that is where my grandfather's love for art started at a very young age when he was over there in World War II and actually understood how valuable artwork was. And I think that was one of the reasons why he was so supportive of me throughout my whole entire life of growing up, and knowing that I wanted to be an artist and respected me in that part of me the whole way. And then also, Zara's other grandfather was in the Air Force. And so we have, yes, we come from military families. And that is, I think that is something that has been important to our family. And then my stepdad also served and was a military police officer for many years. And then also was a police officer in North Dakota as well, and is now retired.
Your ancestry is German and
My ancestry is German, also Blackfeet, and English, and also Sioux.
Native American.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I did share that with you when you were here for your residency. You and I had a long discussion about that because I talked about how Glendalough is sacred land and is on ancestral and unceded land
Hmm.
of Anishinaabe and also Dakota peoples. But you and I, when we were talking about that as well, what brought that up is when we were talking about the rioting that happened when you were a child with Rodney King as well. That was part of that conversation when we were discussing that. But what is so important that I want to share about my ancestral bloodline and linkage is that my grandfather, who was the one that served over in World War II and was actually in one of Hitler's palaces,
What was the name
he,
of the palace? Do you know?
I don't remember the name of the palace. We have photographs of it because he took photographs of him and
Hmm.
his troop mates there. And
Wow.
so our family has photographs of him over there. But I don't know what the palace name was. But the one thing that he wanted to share with me before he passed away in 2019 was our ancestral heritage.
Mhm.
Mary Lehman is where I get my Blackfeet Nation from, and who she met my great grandfather, where they met, and they moved to Rice Lake, which is in Wisconsin, by the reservation, and had a cabin there. And my mom actually remembers growing up and going out to the cabin out by Rice Lake. And Grandma Mary totally assimilated into the German Catholic culture that the Lehmans they were raised as. And so she never wore her braids, but she always wore a bun on the back. And then she also had her beautiful furs that she had as well. And my grandfather wanted to make sure that my daughter would actually know about her lineage and where she comes from. And then we have the German, which Lehman is German, Schliesman is German, and then also Lehman is English. There's some English in there as well. I want to share one more thing with you though, but remember how I talked about how my grandmother Barbara would take me out on the prairie on the horses and show me all of the plants that were on the prairie?
Right.
She was actually showing me the medicines because that is where we get our Sioux bloodline from, as my great grandmother on that side was Sioux as well. So
You mentioned your grandfather's being inoculated, and you said he got sick and he couldn't go.
he was extremely sick. He couldn't
Mm.
even get out of bed. That's why they didn't let him board the plane,
Right.
because he was running a fever. He was ill. Yep.
So the plane crashed in the general area during takeoff.
Yep.
Is there a memorial area somewhere memorializing them?
There is not, because back then it was all about getting the men over there to fight. There was no, during that time of the war, it was
Mhm.
getting everyone ready, prepared, and ready to go over to Germany to fight.
You've seen pictures of some of Hitler's artwork.
I've seen pictures of what my grandfather took of the palace, which were like, they look like, it's because they're black and white, they're not in color. So you can't really tell
Oh.
if they were gold or metal. There were sculptures, he saw paintings, but they're those kind of like the color of this drawing back here, like the black in that kind of tonal brown color. They're not even like true black and whites because they've faded over time. And so you can't really tell what type of material they're made out of. But you can see where when they went in to seize the palace, he took some photographs of that where they're celebrating one another. And then he told me about his experience of seeing the artwork and his first time appreciating what artwork was about, and seeing it in real life.
And so let's delve back into your artwork. How does your creative process relate to materials associated with sculpture and velvet?
I love this question. So my one grandparents, where they lived out on the farm, because they're farmers as well. My grandfather, who went to Germany, he and his brothers actually started the family farm and continued it as well. And they had this beautiful farmhouse that they had, and they had flocked velvet wallpaper, and it was like my favorite ever.
Hmm.
And so my grandmother would actually sit in her chair and say her rosary. And as she was saying the rosary, I would sit behind her chair and listen to her. And I
Mhm.
would feel the patterns of the flocked wallpaper and mimic the outline and silhouettes of all the designs. And so that that sensation of that touch, and also the memory of what she was doing at that time of reciting the rosary, was something that influenced me with my work. And so that is where the velvet comes into play, is actually growing up and having that velvet wallpaper all over the home. And then their home also had orange shag carpet, which is one of the reasons why I love the bright colors that I choose within my artwork.
Mhm.
And I mean, they had the most brightest yellow and oranges and reds within their home. And then it was heavily ornamented with metal, very detailed metal dining room chairs, down to where my grandmother collected bells, which was one of the things that she loved to collect. And then also with her designing of the clothes, that's one of the reasons why also heavily textile is in my work, is because my grandmother would create her own patterns out of newspaper, and she would create and make these patterns of these beautiful dresses and shirts that she would design, and then she would give to us for Christmas or other people as well. And so I always was in this family of people who were making and giving back to people in the community. And so it's something that has shaped who I am as an artist, with creating and figuring out what materials I want to use. And I always get asked this question: so, Naomi, do you think about the materials first or the idea? And for me, it's the idea first that comes into mind when I want to make something, being an object or an installation within a space. The idea comes to mind first about the concept of what I want to be talking about. And then I think about how I can utilize the velvet, how I can be utilizing other textures, and then also the colors that I want to be incorporating. But I also work in wood and rubber also different colored paints. I've even worked in feathers, which we'll talk more about my beautiful chaos exhibition, which I think is just something that was a huge transition within my work that we can discuss more. Being immersed in materials and how we aesthetically decorate the places in which we grow up in, or even the institutions that we were brought up in, because I was raised Catholic, I went to Catholic school. And so I was surrounded by stained glass. I was surrounded by these gold gilded altars. It was always something grand and beautiful. And that was, luscious. It shined. You wanted to touch it. It was something, that was calling to you of like, oh, this is precious. This is beautiful. And so I think that is something that has been a part of me and ingrained in about how I aesthetically look at things and how I create things.
Your artwork is usually associated with sculpture, wood, fiber, plastic, rubber, and metal to create artistic objects and art installations that reflect her fascination with science and explore complex ideas and themes such as the environment, religion, sex, and death. Through your preoccupation with these ideas, she asks the viewer to consider their personal awareness of these themes while interacting with the artwork and to think of the turning points that have happened in their lives.
So a lot of the work comes from my own personal experiences and challenges and joys that I have experienced of, the joys of experiencing the memories and the making processes with my family and the different materials that they've used. And then, there has also been domestic abuse within the family as well. There has been addiction that has been within the family. And for me, when I'm creating my work, that is a way for me to have a voice and to express myself in those experiences that I have had within my family, within my community. And for me, I always know that no one is going to understand my experience or what I am, saying through the artwork, but it's also a way of me bringing awareness to these subject matters that do need to be discussed and talked about. And that is where right now where my work is transitioning even more into more political statements, talking about what's happening now. And also for the next generation, with me having a 8-year-old, I'm concerned about her future, especially being a female, and the way that our nation is, in my opinion, is backpedaling back and not going forward like it should be.
Have you ever used any pieces from deer in your art? Bones?
I actually, no, so one of my first large scale sculpture pieces that I created in undergrad was made out of buffalo bladder that I got from a local person who raises buffalo. And one of the main reasons why I wanted to use the buffalo bladder is because traditionally in our indigenous background, that is where, you use everything from the buffalo. There were ways in which they found down to the bone, to even the bladder, the teeth, the fur, the meat was utilized. And that was something that was very sacred. And so for me, what I wanted to do is I created this sculptural piece where the actual buffalo bladder was then dried and then also blown up into the bladder shape. And then it contained the actual water. And then I created a sphere that was made out of wood that surrounded that. And then there was dirt on the bottom of that wooden sphere where that buffalo bladder hung inside of it. And then because it was live tissue, that water inside that bladder it was dripping down into the soil of the bottom of the sculpture. And I made it so that when the wind would hit it, it would actually turn and rotate. And so it was speaking to the elements of the earth and how those elements are so very important, and that it was one of my first times ever using animals. And then also I have another piece where I found a turtle shell that was on a piece of property that I lived on about 9 years ago, outside of Underwood. And I took the shell, and then there were some deer teeth as well. that were scattered out on this one land where obviously someone had gotten their deer and then they left some of the bones behind. And I took it and I've created them into sculptural pieces that I have exhibited in different universities and galleries across the nation.
When you're talking about, I guess, how your art is being more influenced by what's going on in politics, you want to further go?
Yeah, most definitely. My artwork right now, what is so very important to me, Nahshon, is that all of us as artists have our own way in telling our stories, right? And creating our stories and expressing those through literature, through making actual art objects. And so for me, some of the things that, that I'm very concerned about is with us coming out of COVID. And when COVID hit, there was failure of systems across the board. There was this beautiful chaos, as what I love to describe it as, where society was having a contemporary struggle of navigating the new normals of what we all had to be doing as families and individuals. And for me, it talked about how these were systemic failures and also different dispositions within institutions of trying to figure out how to keep things going, right? And how to stay connected. And for me, it became this way of thinking about how there could be beauty in this. As we were all isolating and having to do certain things to protect ourselves and our families. And it became a catalyst for joy, I found out, for me and my own daughter, and a way of thinking about collective healing and how others could deal what was happening. But it also created a sense of generated solutions for generations to come. I really do think that with the pandemic, it has really made us look into what the future holds for the next generation coming up. And you and I have had these discussions on the phone before about the way that our society is right now with a lot of violence that is happening. My daughter just had a code red at her elementary school where I had to go and get her because someone had called in and threatened to shoot out the windows in the elementary school. Coming down to the fact of that families are struggling with inflation in so many ways. And not only families, everyone is. And for me, it's about these new systems are trying to find new ways and to navigate and implementing these new ways of living. Climate change, I feel, is legitimate. I'm seeing it happen here in Minnesota. We have no snow right now. We have had 3 snowstorms, and typically we would have at least 12 to 14 inches of snow right now, and there's no snow. Yesterday it was 60 degrees. It was completely, yeah.
Oh, wow.
I might even be able to plant my garden by the end of April, beginning of May, which will like prolong the growing season, but also too, like, we're not going to get enough moisture to be able to have within our soils or for our water table. So for me, having a voice of being able to talk about how there are these systemic failures that are happening and creating work about that. And last year I had 3 solo exhibitions where I really was emphasizing on that, where one of the exhibitions titled Mending What Once Was. And that was about taking materials that reminded me of certain institutions, being churches, hospitals, family interior homes that families would live in. And I created these objects and paintings that physically had this repetition of mending, of either sewing, riveting, or the repetition of making multiples of something, to be talking about how with our healing process, we have to go back in and we have to thread everything together to get to where we need to be to create on that healing journey. The second one was titled Beautiful Chaos, which was a exhibition that was combined of 2D and also 3D sculptural works that spoke about having these new norms and how our actual systems were broken. And so I created these objects and did these installations that were installed at the Cadets Gallery. And one of my favorite pieces that I created with that is where I took 2 chandeliers and I had the chandelier hang like how you normally hang, and then I flipped the other one upside down. So it was two chandeliers on top of one another and had to rewire that
Mhm.
and create that. And it was talking about how our lives were turned upside down, but also at the same time, the chandelier worked. You could turn it on. It was beautiful. It was bright. It looked odd. It didn't look normal, but it was speaking as to how, even though with the struggles that we have, we find new ways and to problem solve and to create ways to navigate new systems. And then
Mhm.
that's where I introduced also the new material that I haven't worked with, which are pheasant feathers. And what pheasant feathers represent actually is imagination and also creativity.
Mhm.
And they are the bird of they're the spirit bird of the great problem solver,
Mhm.
and that they invent new ways to solve problems, which I think is that speaks to like what we've all had to go through. And then they also have a keen sense of their surroundings. And also within the Buddhism religion, they are the principle of change. And then the other bird that I brought into that exhibition as well was the peacock. And did you know that the peacock and the pheasants are cousins? I learned this during my research. They are birds that are related to one another.
No, but I'm not surprised.
No, yeah, I mean, they're both beautiful animals.
Right.
And that is where peacock actually represents the regrowth, rejuvenation, the loyalty, also respect, honor, integrity. And
Mhm.
then the main symbolism of them as well is love and passion in what they do. And
Mhm.
then the white peacock feathers actually represent pride. And so within the pieces that I created, you can see how I use those symbolisms to actually create and form the sculptural pieces
Mhm.
and to integrate them in with wood and also metal and rubber. And then lastly, the third exhibition that I worked on last year, which was a solo exhibition, was called Turning Point, was about where we've all made it to this point where we have made our own decisions on what we believe in, what we want to support, and what we want to be an advocate in our communities and also for the future generations.
Mhm.
And so with us, all of us being at that turning point, we all have our own opinions, we all have our own ways in which we are advocating and working within our communities. And I think that's important for all of us artists to stay true to that and to push those barriers and to ask those hard questions, but then also too to make people feel uncomfortable, I think, in having those conversations. I'm open to having conversations with people all the time that revolve around politics and what's happening because I want to hear their point of view. I want to share my point of view.
Mhm.
And I want to be open to that discussion so that there can be communication, which I think is so very important. And I think a lot of artists are doing that right now with their artwork, being through music, being through video, installations, paintings, photography. We're all having our own ways in which we're having those discussions. We are in an art movement right now. I don't know what it's called, but there's this big transition that is happening within ways in which artists are creating their work. We have AI getting into this, we
Mhm.
have digital work getting into it.
Mhm.
And there are ways in which I know a lot of artists feel threatened by what is happening with AI and what is the potential of that. But
Mhm.
also, too, throughout art history, we have seen how these movements have transitioned the art world and have made us move into different art movements. And so I always tell my daughter, think about this. Think about like what mom does and like what you're learning right now and
Mhm.
how it's affecting you and how you're going to be creating in the future.
You've showcased your artwork in New York, Chicago, Minneapolis, St. Paul, Pittsburgh, Brooklyn, Seattle, and numerous other major cities across the Midwest and the country. Across the years, and you just spoke about a few of your exhibitions that were created during the pandemic. Across the years, how frequently have you exhibited your work?
Oh my goodness. I try to get into at least 4 to 5 group shows, and I try to have at least 1 to 2 solo shows every year. However, This year, though, is an exception because I am trying to let my body heal. Because with me doing those 3 solo shows last year, right after having a full bilateral mastectomy,
Mhm.
I think I pushed my body in ways that I shouldn't have, but also too, it was like making me fight even harder what I was dealing with battling the cancer and how sick I was.
Is there a particular exhibition that holds special significance for you? And if so, what makes it stand out?
Oh, most definitely. That would be my graduate thesis show, which actually my local newspaper just did a interview on that and a highlight on that because that exhibition in my
Was
thesis
that
show.
was that Turning Point?
No, this was occupied cognition.
Occupied
Which,
Cognition?
yep,
Okay.
which was my thesis show for my Master of Fine Arts for my MFA. That was such an inspirational and important exhibition because I created these 4 individual rooms that I built. And each room had its own color and its own representation
Mm.
of actual cognition of my own memories of what I pulled from and created these rooms. And I actually did these performance pieces in that I haven't shared. I have video work of it that I'm going to continue to work on and edit. And then a local musician actually saw one of the photographs in the news article that just came out about it and wants to actually create music to go along with that performance piece. So one thing about artists that I don't think a lot of people understand is that we create work throughout our whole entire lives. And there are times where we'll go back to something that we created, or we'll go back full circle and think about it and think about how it's influenced us and how we can go in and actually add to it. But also, too, there are pieces that we've created and we're done with. And I think it's really interesting in how we can work that way because you know how that is like when you have a draft of something and you go back and you re-edit it and you rework it.
Mhm.
That's also what a lot of times visual artists and creatives do, is that is something that we go back as we may have other memories or we may have other things that we want to include in there or take out.
Mhm.
And so that exhibition was so important for me
Definition.
because I did a full performance. I physically built those rooms that were they were 4 by 4, and actually sought out this warehouse where I could install the work and have the exhibition there.
Where would you like to exhibit your work that you haven't had the opportunity to yet?
Oh, that's a great question. A lot of times artists would say, I'd love to show somewhere out on the East Coast or West Coast.
Mhm.
But for me, I would love to have a show in Amsterdam. Amsterdam captured my heart when I went over there and experienced it and got immersed into the culture and met the people and went to the museums and how they live their lives. And so for me, I would love to have a solo show one day at one of the museums in Amsterdam.
What is
Mhm.
what is the main reason that you enjoy or love creating art? What's your passion behind creating art?
My passion behind creating my art for me comes from a personal purpose of being able to have a voice where a lot of times, writers or people who do poetry can write out words and express themselves, their passion that way.
Mhm.
And for me, it is where I make physical objects that tell a story and that can ask hard questions. And that is where my passion comes from, that of being able to create objects that people can relate to, that people find joy and also sorrow in, and that there there's an attraction aesthetic quality that I love making with the work.
Mhm.
And the passion truly comes from of physically making it, where a lot of people are all like, you should write. I'm like, I'm not a writer. I love making the actual installations and the sculptures or the paintings. That's my way of writing, of telling the story.
You're quite transparent about your health struggles, particularly with cancer. Earlier, you
Mhm.
mentioned your visits to the Mayo Clinic, and you've told me about that over the years, different things. Could you elaborate on how those challenges have influenced your artistic expression and creativity?
Oh, most definitely. The other thing that I wanted to share is like, I'm very, very transparent about having the breast cancer, and I'm an advocate for this because younger generations of being female and male across the board are getting breast cancer. It is because of our environment and the toxins that are in our environment,
And
also the
colon
hormones.
and colon cancer too.
Yeah, colon cancer. Yeah, colon cancer as well. And what is so interesting about that is I do my own research, and speaking about the colon cancer is that there are certain toilet papers that use toxic chemicals to dye the toilet paper and process our toilet paper. And there is proven studies that are linking toilet paper to actual colon cancer, and other female cancers as well. There are small plastics that are in our water that we are consuming and are feeding the cancers that are, that can be within us. And that's where with mine, I had DCIS, which is hormone driven. And then I also had a second type, which was invasive carcinoma. And what is so interesting about my case is that I had a tumor of the DCIS tumor that was in my right breast. And then they did not know this at the time when they did the biopsy, but I made the choice. It was my own choice, and everyone has their own journey and how they want to pursue their cancer treatments, to have a full bilateral mastectomy. And what the Mayo Clinic actually found when they removed both of my breasts, I donated them to research because of at the young age that I got it, and then also knowing how was this hormone driven? Where was this coming from? And when they were in the process of dissecting, they sliced the breast and they found out that within the DCIS tumor was the invasive carcinoma tumor hiding, which is very rare. And so it was something that I knew that I made the right choice about for me and my daughter. And for me, I created a large sculpture piece that was called the Heroine's Badge, that was showcased at the Rourke Museum. And it was talking about how all of us have our own battle scars and our own ways in which we have battled things within our lives, being physically with health issues, mentally with health issues too. And it was something that was very important to me to create, as it mimics the actual battle scars that I have from my bilateral mastectomy. And for me, it was a voice and to be talking about how this is something within our society. And a lot of people don't want to talk about it. There's private support groups, but out in the open, a lot of people get uncomfortable about it. And I don't. I'm all like, nope, it's about saving the women and making sure that the women live.
So you mentioned Heroine's Badge. I hadn't heard about that one. How many exhibitions have you created based around your health issues?
Oh my goodness.
There's
Well,
there's
before,
a silver lining,
yep.
Heroine's Badge. How many others?
Oh, there are multiples. The first one that I ever created that I actually haven't shared with you is where I created a life-size female bronze uterus, because when I was 16, I completely lost my right ovary to a cyst. And then it was my left one I completely lost. And then I got a second one when I was 18 on my right one, which damaged half of it. And I was told then since the age of 18 that I would never be able to have children. And so I created this actual bronze piece that I still have in my collection. It's kept in my personal collection. And it's a life-size bronze uterus that indicates how there's one ovary missing and another ovary damaged. And there's a bunch of texture on it. You can also see that it has a lot of pain within it. And that is one of the first pieces that I've created about my health issues that I've had to go through throughout my life. And that piece is so very important to me because at the age of 47, I found out that I was pregnant with my daughter unexpectedly the day before Mother's Day. And for me, that piece holds a lot of emotion and also now joy for me, because Even though I had those issues, I was still capable of being able to conceive and carry Zara.
Throughout your life, you've had 18 different procedures to remove cysts and tumors from your body, or is it more at this point?
It is 18 at this time. Yep. And that is where that has also been, I was in a car accident the day before my high school graduation, and my actual nose got crushed. And so one of those, that was from a surgery when they had to go in and actually fix my left septum of my nose so I could breathe properly. Otherwise, it's been actual tumors, organs that have had to be removed as well. And so I have multiple scars on my body, which my daughter will ask me about all the time. And growing up, I was very shy and wanted to cover everything up and not like wear a swimsuit, because I also had a large tumor that was removed off of my left rib cage, and it's a big scar, and my actual rib sticks out on that one side. And so you can really tell, and it's obvious. It looks weird. And now it doesn't bother me. I go out, I wear a swimsuit, and if people ask, I'll tell them about it. And so yeah, it's been a journey, Nahshon. But the other thing is too is I've learned a lesson from all of those procedures and things that I've had to go through that have created who I am and have given me the strength to continue to do what I want to be doing.
This was in regards to the silver lining collection. There's different things within my body that are changing, and that's where I am creating some of these pieces as well.
Yes. And that is where, as we age and our bodies continue to grow, but also the environments in which we put our bodies in and the toxins that we surround ourselves with. And what I mean by toxins is that I'm talking about environmental things that we surround ourselves with. Growing up, I grew up on the farm where they were out in the fields spraying, and we were outside, and there were pesticides sprayed all over while we were playing outside. There is contamination within water systems. I mean, there's microplastics within our bottled waters and things that we are drinking and consuming. And so for me, that exhibition was really talking about how I had a huge health struggle at that time with my liver, because actually my sphincter completely closed shut and it was not moving through. And so I got sick. And so that was the silver lining about learning again about how we can't take our health for granted, and that we need to be active and creative all the time. But also, too, there are times where we need to have rest, and we need to have our downtime to really process and understand what we've been going through, maybe what our families or friends that are with us on those journeys too.
With you talking about rest, this was a quote somewhere. You've experienced the firsthand challenges of childcare shortages and juggling the responsibilities of being a full-time mom and professional. How do you balance your personal life and career obligations? You're a single mother, you're an artist, you're a full-time employee. You served on the Public Arts Commission for the City of Fergus Falls Public Library Arts Advisory Committee for 8 years. You're on the Minnesota board. You're continuing your studio practice. You're a contracted consultant and art facilitator for Springboard for the Arts. You're a teaching artist at Cadats Galleries. You're the gallery curator and arts calendar editor for Lake Region Arts Council. And you're the part-time personal assistant to artist Jeff Zachman.
I just want to say, yes, I was a full-time professional. And now that when I got sick with the cancer, and even before that, not knowing what was wrong and why I was so sick, I actually had to cut back my hours. And with the pandemic as well, with being a single mom and being a full-time professional and having the things that were happening in my life, that is where I transitioned into being a freelancer so that I could have a more open schedule. I had to homeschool my daughter, and then,
Who's an artist too.
yes, and being an artist, and being someone active within my community where, I did serve for 8 years on the Public Arts Commission, and now I'm serving on the Fergus Falls Public Art Library.
So where do you
Um,
find all the energy for this?
I know it sounds,
Is this something in the deer meat?
it is part of, yes, it is part of my beliefs and my heritage. I wholly believe that. But to be honest with you, yeah, I've had to slow down. It's been really hard for me to do that because I always want to be going, going, going. But I've made some decisions, and with my health and with me letting my body heal at this time, that's where the freelancing has really helped me, where I can set up my own schedule. I can be a parent at the same time to my daughter, which is the most important thing to me. And I've curated my life in the way that I want to live it. And that's where for the past 3 years, I have been invited to be a guest juror for Minnesota State University Moorhead, also North Dakota State University, and Concordia College last year, where I was their guest juror to come in and also do an artist talk. And I gave an artist talk on about how to curate your life. And that is how what I have found out, Nahshon, and through all of this, and even through the pandemic, that there have been so many challenges within my life that have tried to stop me. There have been, things that have made major changes within my life. And that is where I've decided that I am going to pivot and do the turning points of problem solving of what I can be doing. And to find that time and energy is that I do a lot of planning. And with the freelancing, I schedule out at least a year in advance, where I know what I'm going to be doing as a teaching artist and only going to be doing, these certain workshops. And then with working for Jeffrey Zachman at Zachman Studios, I do that 10 hours a week for him. And so it is a way in how I have learned underneath that umbrella of everything that you just shared, that like I engulf my life with and that I do. I have learned how to manage that, and with time management, which I think is so very important, but also too I've realized like what's important to me and what's not. And that's one thing that people who know me, I am very outspoken. I will say how I feel, and I will get things done. And if
Yeah,
it's
well,
something
you do get things done. I like that about you. You do. Yeah, yeah.
and if I don't like something, I'm not going to put 100% in it, and I don't give it the time of day. And that's
Thanks for
and
showing up today.
thank you
I've
for
had
having me.
time management is everything, and showing up and the energy. So, and even with all of that and the time management, you still found the time to, last autumn, you established a Girl Scout troop consisting of 11 girls, including your daughter, Zara.
Mhm.
So what motivated you to initiate the group?
So we found out that my daughter Zara, her best friend, really wanted to be in Girl Scouts as well. And then I found out that there were some other second graders too, because last year she was a first grader, and then that summer we were transitioning into second grade. And I found out that there are a bunch of these little girls who wanted to be in Girl Scouts, but the troop that we were currently in was full at 12, because they cap Girl Scouts at 12. I mean, you can have more if you want, but that's where I was all like, you know what? No, I think I'm going to create a second group. And I really didn't think we'd have that many girls sign up. I thought maybe 5 or 6, because it was all like, I asked around, and then I asked a good friend of mine if she would be a co-leader with me as well, because of all of the health issues I have had going on in navigating and time management. I was all like, nope, I want to invite another mom to be a part of this too. And she was all like, yeah, let's do this. And I got everything set up and registered, and we had 11 girls right away. And we've had a fantastic, it's only been, it's been 7 months since we started this and having everything. And It has been incredible. We are having the girls learn about democracy. We're having the girls learning about their voting rights. We're having the girls learn about how city council works. We're even doing our fun arts and crafts and having them understand what engineers do, what fashion designers do, even to artists. And right now we are in cookie season.
Mhm. What's up with the cookies? What's up with the cookies?
So, and actually today is the Girl Scouts birthday, actually on March 12th. I think it's 112 years Girl Scouts have been in existence. I just thought of that right now. I just remembered that because we had our Girl Scout meeting yesterday.
Oh, did you?
Uh, they have been around for a long time, and what they implemented with the girls actually selling Girl Scout cookies is to help them to understand what it is to be an entrepreneur and to learn about time management, budget, marketing, and sales. And then also about they have different rewards and different tiers that they can work to depending upon how many boxes of cookies they sell. And it's been really great to see the girls who have been really excited about this and have excelled in it. Zara is only actually, she's only 66 boxes short of 1,000 boxes of cookies.
How does she sell so many? Was it because of your contacts?
Well, it's because I would not say it my contacts, I would say our contacts, because wherever I go, Zara goes. And that's even like if I have an art exhibition, she comes with me. She knows when mom is talking or presenting, she sits and she listens. And she has been doing that since she was an infant.
Will she often repeat back certain things that you said? I mean,
Oh,
she's
she'll
very,
tell me. She's my critic. She'll tell me you're gonna wear that like as we're getting ready to go, and I'm all like, okay, I'll go change.
shade, shade. Oh, wow.
And then she'll even come down to about like even the lipstick that I'm wearing. But she'll even ask me. She'll be like, "So, mom, what are you going to discuss?"
And she's
I'm
in
like, "What
school,
do you
right?
mean?"
In school right now, right? She's a
Yeah,
class.
she's at school right now. Yep. She will ask me that. And then not only that, she'll challenge me too, because when I'm in my studio making my work, what I have found what works for us with me being a single parent is that on the one side of my studio, because my studio space is very large, it is 12 feet wide by, I think it's 36 feet long.
It's not in your
Um,
house.
yes, it's in the bottom of my house.
You said the
Um,
bottom. What do you mean? The basement?
in the basement. Yep.
Oh,
In the basement. Because we
uh-huh.
have it's like a rambler style. And then I have a garage as well where I have my woodworking and also my welders out there. But I also have access to go and work at Zechman Studios, which is a full metal shop, which is amazing.
There's a picture
Um,
of you. There's a picture of you. You have on overalls, a white shirt under the overalls, and you have on like a pair of goggles, and you have a tool. I don't know
mhm.
if that was used for one of your biography photos, but you know which picture I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, that was actually when I was at Kimball Harding Nelson Center for the Arts, when I was awarded that fellowship. I was actually out in their studio space for the visual artists to be working in when I was working on a project with a writer from London, Joan.
Okay.
And so for me, studio spaces are very important when I go to residency programs, which I know we're going to talk more about. But in my studio space, I have created it where more than three-fourths of it is all of my equipment and my work that I need. And then the other one-fourth is Zara on the very end, where she has her own table, her own supplies, her own easel. She
Mhm.
even has her own TV so that because she
Mhm.
knows when mom is working, like she needs to be working. And what has happened from that is that Zara has also started creating her own artwork, and she has been in 3 exhibitions already, and she has sold over 5 paintings already, which have gone into her college fund or after school fund, I like to call it, because she gets to decide what she wants to do when she's done with high school, if that be college or traveling. That
Mhm.
fund will be there for her.
Schliesman's young daughter has served as an inspiration for the artist. In the gallery, she has a few paintings displayed that were created by her and her daughter, who's been painting since the age of 1. She's not trained. She tells me how to do things and I listen. When she's done painting, I go back in and I do mark making with markers and chalk markers and come up with these beautiful designs together. She started at
Yes.
the age of 1.
She actually started at the 8 months. She started painting. She had her own little easel that I had on her little table because she started walking at 8 months. And for me, I was all like, I need to find something that is going to keep her in one spot so I could get things done.
Right, right, right.
And so I got her own little easel. I gave her own paintbrushes and she had her finger paint. And Nahshon, she would just sit there for hours and I gave her all like the paper. She could paint on the tables, on the walls. I didn't care because I could clean it up. It was finger paint. And she just, so since the 8 months, she's been painting. And so this exhibition that you were talking about, which was a mother-daughter exhibition, we actually collaborated together on paintings where I painted the background of some of the canvas paintings. And actually, this one right here behind me is one of them, where I painted the background, the solid color, and then just put in a couple of lines. And then Zara went in and did all of the mark making that you can see on this large canvas. And then another one that we did as well like that was it's 4 feet long by 3 feet. And the collaborations that we do together is I give her the paint. She gets to choose out the color she wants. She goes in and she does all the mark making. And then the other pieces that you were speaking about where I went back in with the markers is I went in to highlight her mark making. And they turned into these beautiful collage pieces that her and I created that I actually am keeping in my art collection for her, where those are not for sale.
Okay.
Because they're our first pieces that we created together when she was 1 year old.
Wow. And real quick, the sales for the cookie sales, Girl Scout, what is that? Where do the proceeds go to?
So the girls earn 65 cents per box of cookie that they sell, and that goes back to the troop so that then the girls get to decide what they want to be spending that money on back into the community. And we've already had the discussion about it where they just did World Think Day, where they learned about over in Africa, where a woman taught her tribe how to actually plant trees so that would help to preserve the water and also shade and help with food production. And so now the girls they discussed about how they've actually want to go around and plant trees.
Oh.
So, and they've been talking about apple trees, which I think is so interesting. And so they have come up with one of the ideas. I'm not sure if we're going to do that because they have other ideas as well, because they want to help with Habitat for Humanity. They also want to help with the Humane Society. But we're thinking about maybe possibly buying some trees and planting trees within our community. So all the money that they make goes back into their community and they get to decide how they spend that money within the community.
So you've studied in Italy, Scotland, Ireland, France, the United Kingdom, Netherlands, Belize. You've done artist residencies at Vermont Studio Center, Kimmel, Hardening, Nelson Center for the Arts, Ragdale, the Traveling Museum, and Hospital Field Arts.
Yes.
Any more that I missed?
No. Those are the ones that I have been able during college for graduate and after graduate school. I was awarded and able to attend before I actually started my professional career with Springboard for the Arts. Because before I did that, I was able to travel and to do residencies. And I think that is one of the main reasons that really helped me as well in designing and creating the Hinge Art residency that was at Springboard for the Arts and the residency where you and I met.
Right, right. We're going to get into that a little bit more. What's your ideal artist residency?
My ideal artist residency, my favorite has been, I mean, they're all been great, but Ragdale was amazing, which is just
it's Ragdale, not Ragdale.
Ragdale, yep.
Ragdale.
Which is outside of Chicago. And it is on this beautiful property that was owned by a family. And what you get is when you get there, you have your own personal space, your own bedroom, your own bathroom, and then they have a full-size kitchen. But they do all the shopping for you. Like they know what your dietary restrictions are. And then they also have a chef that comes in and makes the evening meals for you. And that to me is so important because having those meals prepared and also having the studio space and your own private bedroom and bathroom too is
Mhm.
so very important because it's like it's your time. You don't have to worry about other people's coming into your space or even sharing a bathroom, because I've had to share bathrooms before in the past at residencies, which I totally understand,
Mhm.
but it's just I don't like it.
Yeah.
It's not my thing.
Yeah. Where would you like to be? Where would you like to go? Where would you like your next artist residency to be?
I would love to go to Sculpture Space, which is out in the East Coast. And it is a residency where people who create large scale works
Hmm.
can go and create work. And then you typically get an exhibition after being at the residency.
Hmm.
And that to me would be very important. But also, too, like I need to do more research because with the pandemic, a lot of artist residencies closed because they couldn't
Right.
get the funding. They also, you couldn't bring people in. There was the risk of them getting sick. What would you do? And so I totally understand how there's been a big transition
Mm.
and what residencies are available now. And one of the things that I'm looking at, especially for next summer, is my plans are to find an artist residency that's family friendly so that Zara and I can travel there, so that Zara can be with me
Mhm.
and then I can have a studio space and she can be with me. And that some of them I do know provide childcare, but also too, she's going to be old enough, 'cause she'll be 9, where she'll be able to come with me and she can create with me in the studio as well.
Mm.
So for to me, it's always finding new ways for creating. And I think I would like to go to the West.
18th Street Art Center. I think you can have a family member or someone with you. I could be
Really?
wrong,
I'll
but
have to check into that.
yeah, you have to check into that. Wes, that sounds good.